welcome back to Political Science Student Association. We meet here every Wednesday at noon. Obviously not next week. We will not be here next week. But today we have the lovely Dr. Kelly here to talk to us about ethics in government, and honestly, wherever that conversation leads. I wanted to just kind of open it up for maybe you to talk about whatever you want to for a bit, and then y'all can feel free to ask her questions, and I think she'll be happy to answer, but I won't speak for you.
No, I don't answer questions. No.
So, with that in mind, like I said, spring break next week. Hope y'all are doing great on your midterms and everything, and Cavalli will tell you about the next attendance sheet.
Yeah, one last thing before we actually start, before we turn it over to Dr. Kelly. For those of you, especially who are newcomers, we will be passing around, in addition to the QR code scan attendance that you all did, we'll be passing around a good old-fashioned sign-up sheet where we will verify your attendance, and you'll have the opportunity to put a faculty name next to your name. And if you put that faculty name down, or if you can squeeze in 2 or 3, more power to you, we will contact that faculty member to verify your attendance. As Dr. Kelly knows, we send out emails every so often. Can't guarantee they're going to do anything about it. I don't know if she's ever done anything about that.
My American government kids get extra credit.
There you go.
But not my upper division classes. You guys don't need it. You're good.
So we'll be passing that around in a few minutes. Okay, without further ado.
Okay, so I'm Dr. Kelly, for those of you that I have not met yet. I usually teach a couple sections of American government here and on the Cumming campus lately. I teach in the MPA program, the Masters of Public Administration program, and I usually teach one upper division class this semester. I am loving politics and pop culture, but I also teach an ethics and government class, and that's where kind of Anita came to me and asked me if I would come and talk to you guys a little bit about ethics in government, and trying to figure out how to get an entire course into a 50-minute conversation. And I've been to PSSA before, I know it's a conversation. So I wanted to present just a little bit about what I'm talking about when I'm talking about ethics, how that might apply to government, and then I want to give you guys some ethical dilemmas that you guys can argue about, fight about, converse about. So when we're talking about ethics, what are we talking about? Does anybody have an idea of what I mean by, yeah?
What's good and what's bad for society.
What's good and what's bad for society, okay? So it's kind of like morality in that way, okay? What makes ethics and morality different?
I mean, from a young age, you always taught don't go to the store and steal stuff. That's
Okay.
That's a good example of a bad.
That's an idea of, yeah, definitely. It's a bad thing, right? But are there times when it's okay to steal stuff?
If it's like a free sample, yes.
But then you're not stealing, right? But so ethics, typically what we're thinking of is ethics is defined as moral ideas that are put into rules and regulations that then define our behavior, right? So our morality is usually something that is very personal, it's individualized, right? It may vary from person to person, but it's usually pretty well ingrained in who we are. Ethics, by contrast, vary depending on the circumstance that we're in, right? So if you think about different professions, right? The medical profession, what is their first ethical code that they have in the medical profession?
Do no harm.
Do no harm. Okay, would that work if you're a soldier? No, right? And so ethics are these rules and regulations that are put into place to govern our behavior based on the circumstance or the place that we're in, right? And so you'll see different codes of conduct or ethical rules depending on where you're participating, right? And in government, this is especially important. Are there certain rules and regulations that we expect those in government to have? Well, we hope so, right? We would like politicians who are honest. We would like politicians who care about the general well-being of other people, right? We would like politicians who don't accept bribes or who don't put their family members first. Now, do I understand the reality of the situation that we live in? Yes, I do, right? But ethics are those things that govern us. In the field of political science, at least in public administration, we consider ourselves to be professionals. So in the same way that lawyers have codes of conduct, doctors have codes of conduct, public administrators also have codes of conduct, ways that we are supposed to behave in order to maintain ethical relationships, because we are serving on behalf of the citizenry, right? And so we owe you guys an obligation as part of that. So when we talk about ethics, they govern what you do, they govern your behavior. As you said, they help you determine right from wrong, right? So how do we behave in a certain situation? It's not up to us to decide. It's based on that ethical code, right? Based on the profession that you're in. So for example, we were talking about soldiers just a minute ago, right? Are there codes of conduct that govern behavior for soldiers? Which one can you think of?
No sexual harassment.
Okay, definitely, but
Abandoning
like,
your post.
Can't fire upon non-combatants.
you can't fire upon non-combatants, absolutely. So you think about like the Geneva Convention laws,
Yeah, war crimes.
right? I can kill you in battle, right? But if I take you prisoner, I now have to take care of you.
Can't torture them.
I can't torture you. I have to feed you. I have to give you medical treatment. Why is that something that we put into some sort of rule or regulation?
Well, we probably wouldn't want it to happen to us, for one.
We probably wouldn't want it to happen to us. But it also takes some of the guesswork out of how we're supposed to behave, right? I mean, as a soldier, I was a soldier, right? And so in that combat situation, you have one reaction, right? You're supposed to fire on the enemy. That's the goal, right? But how that changes and shifts, it takes away the guesswork, right? Because we believe that we should follow civilized rules, we don't fire on civilians. We don't treat somebody who has surrendered as an enemy combatant anymore. They are now somebody who has surrendered. They're a prisoner of war. We treat them with respect and dignity and all of those things, right? So we have these rules that govern our behavior. What about in law? How many of you guys are pre-law? Just one? Okay. What are the rules that you have to follow as a lawyer?
Well, I'd say pre-law, but not like the pathway. But,
Okay.
As a lawyer, you aren't able to take on clients that have like opposing interests. Like per se, if someone comes to you to file for divorce, you can't also file for divorce from the opposite
You can't
party.
represent both people?
Yeah.
Okay. That's fair.
Conflict of interest.
Conflict of interest. Did you hear? Were you going to say something? Oh, okay. What else?
I mean, I can.
Yeah, go for it.
I guess you can't do anyone that like you can't represent anyone that's like that you know and that you're friends with or like family with.
Okay. What else?
You have to give your best representation.
You have to give your best representation. Yeah. Even if
You don't like the guy?
you don't like the guy, right? Can you see where that might create some ethical dilemmas? Right? And so I want to talk just for a minute about kind of like ethical dilemmas and how we resolve them, right? So when we think about ethical dilemmas, these are going to be ethical situations where the outcome is kind of questionable, right? How do we decide between the two competing interests? So you guys have heard of the trolley problem.
Yeah.
Okay, so if there's a trolley and it's heading down a track and it can either kill one person over here or two people over here, you have to flip the switch and decide. Who do you decide it should kill?
The utilitarian would say,
Touch it.
not much.
Okay, what would you say?
Well, as a person who likes cars,
Okay,
I wouldn't touch it.
you wouldn't touch it, okay? So you would just passively let it do its own thing. Okay? Yeah?
I think you gotta pull the lever because I think passively not deciding to do something is still a decision that you're making. I think if you, you cannot be responsible if you, didn't know about the trolley problem, but you know about the trolley and it's gonna kill 4 people or 1 person. So you have to make that decision. You can't just blissfully ignore it if you're aware of it.
Because you ignoring it is, like how you said, is making a decision.
Is making
You're
a
choosing what person should still live in that because you know what's happening.
But neither one of you guys have decided. How many people should we kill? 1 or 4?
It should be the
The one?
Flipping the switch is the one, yes?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah. What if we know who that one person is? Does that matter?
Yeah.
I mean, it morally it does not matter, but obviously it will impact my decision.
Why does it morally not matter?
Because it's still like it's one human being versus 4 human beings.
Yeah.
I mean, if we get into like, okay, say that one person was like a murderer, then that obviously changes things.
Right.
But I mean, if I know this person and this person is my friend, it's obviously going to make an impact whether I pull the switch or like let the train hit 4 strangers or like my best friend.
Okay.
Yeah, if it was my dad was on the track and it was 4 other random people, I know in my head that like the 4 people are, there's 4 people there and they're gonna die for that. But I'm saving my dad. Like I'm going, like that is a family member. That's someone who I love. I'm not going to sacrifice that for 4 total strangers. I'm not gonna do that.
I don't blame you. I wouldn't either. Go ahead.
Well, I think also like you don't know who the strangers are, so like I guess in like my head I would be like, well, I mean, they could all be murderers, to be honest.
True.
Like,
Yeah.
You don't know who the one guy is that you killed in the first scenario either. I mean, that's the thing with the utilitarian calculation is that one guy could have cured cancer and the 2 or 3 you saved are, drains on society. That's a harsh word to say, but
Trains on
But,
society.
but in the same way, like the 4 guys could have all been like rapists, and like the one guy could have, or like what I'm trying to say.
yeah,
though, like
but that's exactly why the Kantian thought exists. It's like you can't tell what the consequences of your decision is, so you shouldn't interact to save yourself responsibility.
Okay, now does it matter who you are? If you're a police officer and you're watching this unfold, do you have a responsibility to pull the lever?
Legally, no,
But ethically,
I feel like you have a moral obligation to do it.
do you have an ethical obligation as a police officer
Yeah.
to do something?
It's probably an easier decision for them to make if they've already seen hard things.
Okay. Okay. Yeah.
I mean, if you're a police officer, your job would probably be to cause the least amount of destruction in your community. So your job would be to take the one that causes less death.
Yeah.
So you would have the responsibility to pull it towards the one person.
One person.
I have a cousin who's a police officer, and he always says, like, again, you got to save the most amount of people. Like, in this situation, you've got to prioritize who is more important in this and how many more people you can save. So if there was that situation where there's 4 people tied on the track and only one other person, he would save the 4 people over the one. Even though he doesn't know anything about these people, he would want to save more.
Okay. So it does matter, at least from an ethical standpoint, who you are as the puller of the lever.
you are in relation to others.
Yes. So I have another question for you. Okay, ethical dilemma number 2. You are a software designer who is programming new driverless cars. I know, right? You're the software designer. You program a car to make a decision. You are going to be in a crash and it will either kill the occupants of the car or the occupants outside of the car. What is your ethical obligation?
It depends, of course, on the scenario. Because I remember doing this test like online before, where it's like, if the passenger's in the car, and so let's say someone is walking in the road, but they're walking in the road and they're jaywalking. The car should prioritize saving the occupants. Because like, hey, they're technically breaking the law. We need to save our passenger. But at the same time, if it's like someone is walking in the road and it's legal, and now the car has to make the decision of, do I kill the people who are driving, or do I kill this person who's not doing anything wrong? That's where the whole problem comes into, where I was kind of conflicted. It was like, do you kill the occupants? Because this guy's not doing anything wrong, but you're also not doing anything wrong. So it's a very tough decision. But it's just are we talking about like a legal aspect? Is this person jaywalker, or we just don't know?
I mean, either way, if they're doing something wrong, it's okay to kill them?
I think it still should prioritize the occupants of the of the car, because
Okay.
that's the people who own the car as well. So if that person is doing something illegally, which is again horrible to say, it's just sort of simply just jaywalking, I think it still should prioritize the people in the car, because they're also just as innocent.
Okay.
So
Well, like my dad told me when I was driving around here, like with all the hills and everything, that like if another car is like coming towards you and they like get off the road a little bit, like you should prioritize crashing into them, and even if they die, like rather than just like swerving off into like
A ditch.
yeah, and dying yourself because it's their fault.
Okay, except
I've heard.
both of the drivers are this way, right? So if you crash into them,
Well,
I mean, if we were in England and we drove on the left, you know, on the other side of the road,
I guess so.
maybe.
I don't know. I guess I'd rather die and let them die too then. I mean, it's their fault.
I'm going, you're going with me.
This will be on your conscience.
Like,
Well,
seriously.
I mean, at least a head-on collision, right? It's instantaneous. If you
You
roll
hope.
off
Yeah,
the
you hope.
side, I mean, you roll off the side of a mountain. I mean, that causes immense pain and suffering.
Yeah, I don't want to suffer.
Go ahead.
I was going to say that in the example of the self-driving car, well, in the example of the trolley problem, it kind of scoots around who's to blame for them being there in the first place. But in the like, why are they there on the tracks in the first place? So, like, whose fault is it is a little bit harder. But with the self-driving cars, like he said earlier, there's a lot more ways you can take into account whose fault it is. Like, if it's dealing with another car, what if the like in your example, what if it's their own fault for coming head on with you, doing something they shouldn't? Or if their car is malfunctioning, is it because they're not maintaining their car and they caused it to happen? So you might be able to, I'm not a programmer, but you might be able to put in some backups that'll determine whose fault it is and then act appropriately.
Some caveats.
Yes.
Okay.
All of this is suggesting to me, I have a pop culture thing to bring up based on what we're talking about here. And a lot of it is incomplete information. We don't know these four people or this one person, for example. And it reminds me of a very famous episode of the original Star Trek. It's called City on the Edge of Forever, and you should watch it if you get a chance. It's one of the highest regarded. It's written by Harlan Ellison, a notable science fiction writer. And it's about some of the crew traveling back in time to the 1930s. And what happens is one person goes back in time before the others, and they go back to try and rescue him, to try and find him. And they run across this woman by the name of Edith Keeler. And she runs like a soup kitchen. This is Depression era. She runs a soup kitchen. The captain, Captain Kirk, falls in love with her, okay? But they find out with what little technology they have left that they brought with them back to the 1930s, they find out that, at first they find out that she dies in an auto accident, okay? But then, and their equipment breaks down, and they fix the equipment, and then when they replay this, they find out that she becomes this big, late 1930s, early 1940s, leader of a US peace movement, okay? And what they find is that she leads this national peace movement that delays the US entry into World War II. And because of her actions, the US delays its entry into World War II, and Germany perfects its rockets, and long story short, takes over the world. And so they're left with this dilemma. Kirk is in love with this woman, but she has to die. And that's there's actually, I think, a punk band called Edith Keeler Must Die. She has to die. She's supposed to die in an auto accident, okay? And it turns out that the guy that came back first saved her. And now they have to decide, it's going to happen again. They're going back in time before the accident. It's going to happen again, and they have to decide. They have to let her die. They have to let her get hit by this car. But Captain Kirk's in love with her and doesn't want to. And again, to long story short, the end of it, spoiler alert, is that the guy who came by originally and saved her, Kirk blocks him. And he's like pained, completely pained, but he blocks him and she gets hit and she dies. So that's that kind of incomplete information. We don't always know what the consequences are of whether we direct the trolley on one side or another. 1 versus 4 in terms of pure numbers is probably an easy decision to make. But as we've bandied about, we don't know whether those 4 are murderers and the 1 is a saint or the other way around, et cetera, and that's something that really makes it difficult.
Exactly, and that's one of the reasons that many professions put in place those ethical codes, right? So that you don't have to make those decisions because they know that those decisions are hard. The one that I always think of when I think of legal, right? You have to provide a good defense, but also you're bound by confidentiality, the things that your client tells you. So you find out you're representing a guy who, you are defending him for murder. And you find out that he's murdered like 77 other people. He's more than capable of able to tell you that. But you're not allowed to do anything with that according to the code of conduct, right? You can be disbarred for violating that confidentiality. But how many of us would feel good about that decision? I mean, knowing that this person is going to get away with multiple murders, or knowing that he knows where the victims have been buried and you could provide relief to families who've been looking for their family members. How do you deal with that? So when we start talking about ethical dilemmas, there are a couple of places where you start to see these. So short-term versus long-term is one of them. So for example, an ethical dilemma, short-term versus long-term. I usually think about the environment when we're talking about short-term versus long-term. Is it okay to build, a homeless shelter in a place that will pollute a river for the next 30 years if it gets 100 people homes to live in? Right? In the short term, you're providing a very real benefit to people who are here and now. But in the long term, you're creating problems for future generations. What are our obligations to today, and what are our obligations to the future? How do we decide that?
It's kind of the same similar note. And there's that whole dilemma happening right now with how countries like China and India, they're rapidly industrializing and they're using coal power stuff to get up to the same par as the Western countries. But Western countries are trying to be like, you can't do that. We're polluting the world and all that. But hey, but we're trying to get to the same level that you're at and all that. So again, that whole dilemma is what should we penalize these countries as well for trying to industrialize, being the same stuff that we did 80 years ago, but now it's bad because we say it's bad because it's hurting the environment. So I'm not trying to change the topic.
No. This is great.
It's a very similar thing I thought. So I don't know what I would say personally.
Cody?
I think our obligation to today matters just as much as our obligation to tomorrow. I mean, we're all human. A day is a day. I don't think the present matters any more than the next day. For me, it just doesn't necessarily make sense because it's all the same reality. Why would the future matter more than today, and why would today matter more than the future? I think it's all going to be a lived experience by someone, so we should all take care of both.
Yeah.
So what do you do though when you're making the choice between the two? You can't have both.
I think it really is about making a decision whether the impacts of the future are going to have more harm on the future than the positives of the present. I mean, it really is just you have to weigh them both equally, and whichever does more harm versus good. In a case where it does equivalent harm and good, good for the present and harm for the future, I think you have to go with the future because the future lasts longer than the present.
That's a bar.
A real world example. Escobedo versus Illinois. Anybody know that court case? Daniel Escobedo was accused of murder. This is a classic in the rights of the accused. Okay, Daniel Escobedo was accused of murder and he was questioned by the police. And he wanted the right to speak to a lawyer, and he was denied the right to speak to a lawyer. And they brought that up in his case. He wound up confessing under pressure, and the fact that he was denied the right to speak to a lawyer was used to basically throw out the case. Okay. 20 years later, he murders somebody and winds up getting convicted. So he was a murderer, not at the time of the original act in 1963, I think it was, but he went on to actually commit murders because he was not in prison, because he was not jailed for the original murder. He may or may not have committed that original murder. We don't know. But he did go on to commit another murder.
I would add the Miranda rights onto that. Like, just because of that case now, how many people have gotten away with horrible, horrible crimes just because the officer forgets to read them their Miranda rights as they're being arrested? Another thing that I think makes this dilemma extra complicated is when people who are constantly seeking re-election, politicians are constantly seeking re-election, do you guys think they care more about them in 2026 or them in 2046, 56, 70, you know?
It's the next guy's problem.
Exactly, it's the next guy's problem. But I don't think that constituents do a good job holding leaders accountable for that. But I will add, especially with environmental, I think there are things that we do that we genuinely do not realize the immense consequences that they will have, but that's not every scenario. There are some times that they do it and they just simply do not care.
Well, and also there's the hope of mitigation at some point, right? The future's not written.
I think going back to what she was saying about politicians is like, for the most part, when they're running for re-election, they only care about the present. They're going to say the things that they need to say to get elected. It's like when I was talking about identity politics in class today, like abortion rights is an identity politics issue with Democrats. Like, how much did Biden campaign on ratifying Roe v. Wade? And then when he became president, nothing happened. They did nothing with that because it is something that Democrats can run on. So why fix it? And they're gonna keep doing that in the present. They're not gonna care about the future. They're just gonna care about what can get them elected, what can keep Democrats in power, or what can keep Republicans in power.
Now, I'm going to take just a little bit issue with that and say it depends. Different offices have different perspectives. Presidents who are term limited focus on now, because they've got 4, maybe 8 years to get something done, and they want to get it done now. And many presidents, Lyndon Johnson used to say, but many presidents have also said, you got 18 months. That's it. After 18 months, they're focused on the midterms, and then after the midterms, first of all, you may not have the Congress that you want anymore, and then you're worried about your own reelection, et cetera, et cetera. But members of Congress focus on the career, much longer term, because they can run for re-election infinitely. And so they have different perspectives depending upon the rules.
And I would say conversely, one of the things that I think is really interesting is that even with Trump, right, what was one of the big things that he ran on was closing down the border. Now immigration is not a policy issue, at least ICE is a policy issue, but like people coming across the border is not, and he can't run on that anymore because he solved the problem. And it's the same way, like either you don't solve the problem so you can continue to run on it, or if you solve the problem, then you're penalized for having solved the problem, that it's no longer politically salient to have that conversation. But I think what you said was really interesting, that each is a day, but the future's not written yet, right? And so is there an obligation to what is versus what might be?
Well, I was literally sitting here and like I found a way to contradict myself. Because at the same time, it's like the future is, or what did I say? The future is longer than the present.
Yeah.
But at the same time, the future is not guaranteed. And the only thing that is guaranteed is the present. So we have to take care of now. Okay, well now I've just proved to both sides. It really is.
You gotta pick one.
And that's why you don't have to pick one. That's why it's an ethical dilemma, right? Is how do you decide between short-term and long-term? The other place where we see that a lot is individual versus community. What are our obligations to individuals versus what are our obligations to community? This one for me is really personal. So for those of you who've had me in class, you know my sister has some pretty severe mental health issues, right? Which has led to her being homeless, which has led to her being arrested, you know, like some serious things, right? But we have that question, that ethical dilemma. Do we confine her in a space where she can get the treatment that she needs, where they force her on her medication because it would have to be forced? You know, she gets on it, does good, and then she's like, oh, I'm perfect, I don't need it. No, the reason that you're perfect is because you're on it, not because you don't need it, right? So do we have a responsibility to the individual to allow her to live the life that she wants to live? Or do we have a responsibility to the community? You know, this is somebody who is in and out of facilities, in and out of jails. You know, she's not dangerous, but she could be if she weighed more than 100 pounds. She's a little feisty thing, right? And everything that she's been arrested for is getting mad at police officers when they ask her why she's crazy at the moment, right? And so how do we weigh those two obligations? Where does the individual's rights end and begin? And where do we prioritize the community?
That's the vaccine debate we're having now too,
Yep.
right? The exact same thing.
Yep.
The individual's freedom to do what they want, or is it the community's safety?
You were gonna say something. Sorry. And then, well, yeah, go ahead.
Well, I think like in that scenario, like I think we have an obligation to help her. I mean, like we already know that we are going to help her. Like if first off, that I think that would also help the community in your scenario. But even if it didn't, let's like say like she is a murderer or something, and she can like attack everyone. Like I feel like that's a potential over like something solid that we could actually help a person over like, oh, maybe like some people could get hurt from this.
Okay.
And I kind of want to say as a general sense, but like the right you have as the rights that you have as an individual in as soon as you harm, as your right as soon as it comes to harming somebody, that's a pretty standard like practice that we have. You can't. You have the right to free speech, but when you're fighting, when you're using fighting words or you're harassing people, then like you're harming someone else's.
Well, you can harass other people with your words. You can harm somebody mentally with words, and that's perfectly legal. Hate speech is legal. That is protected under freedom of speech. So that one's a little bit harder.
Yeah, there's a few cases where it depends.
Yeah.
But with your sister, I mean, if she's a danger to herself and other people, and she, like, yeah, her rights to like not take her medicine, and her rights to maybe not live in her own home and not live in a facility, yeah, it is an infraction on her personal rights, but it is for the betterment of herself and the community, which it sucks, but like. That's just how we do. That's what we need to do when we have very severely mentally ill people. Like, we need to give them the help. It's like a parent. If you have a child who is acting in a way that is harmful to themselves, or you don't just like permissively let it happen. You have to correct that behavior. You have to introduce this like, and yes, it violates their own free will to correct that act, but it ultimately is good for them. It's better for them. But it's hard. It's hard to learn.
Can I tell you the personal story? A couple years ago, my brother, I got a call from, I was in middle school, and we got a call, and my mom got a call from the school saying my brother was behaving badly, and so we took him down to Williston Medical Center in Atlanta. So he was behaving badly. We took him down there. It was for his own personal good to feel him better, and we got him the help he needed. He went to like a community school where teaching him about getting better, and now he's perfectly fine. That's my own personal story.
I'm glad to hear that for your brother. Yeah.
You brought up something about how like words can cause harm, and I kind of wanted to bring up the thing that happened. Was it like last night? It was some stupid award for the rich people again. So and
BAFTA?
Maybe I don't know.
Was
what
it the
it's
Tourette's?
called. Yes.
Yes.
Yes. And
It was the British Film Awards. Yeah.
yeah, I don't know if you want to explain it, but that I think that kind of goes along with what you were talking about.
Well, and I mean, now as a person with a medical condition, I mean, I don't know that that's
I think
a
this
tricky
is,
situation.
this is why, getting back to the vaccine argument,
Mhm.
this is why I think the vaccine argument has drifted over whether or not vaccines are harmful or not. So that people who are opposed to taking vaccines, in a sense, have to make the argument that it's causing them harm, not just that they have a right not to.
Yeah.
Because if they are not harmful, then you could make the argument that the community benefit outweighs the individual.
Yep. But if you can make the argument that
That
it's
it's harmful.
then you can, yeah. The other one that I always think about is they recently passed legislation in multiple counties. I know Austin was one of them, the city of Austin, where it is now legal and permissible to sleep outside, right? So they have legalized homelessness, right? So individuals have the right to be homeless if they want and to sleep on streets. And, you know, and then you think about what happened in New York, last week when they had the blizzard. They had multiple homeless people who froze to death because in the beginning of the storm, they didn't want to make people who didn't want to leave. Well, how do you weigh their ethical right to freeze to death? I mean, honestly, against.
That's simply their ethical right to freeze.
Especially
to
if
death.
I mean, should you let them?
Especially if they have mental issues. Like, what if they
Oh, maybe not.
aren't in their right mind?
Well, and what responsibility do we have as other people, like to be responsible for people who can't be responsible for themselves? Or to say, I'm sorry, the choice that you're making is not a valid one. It's freezing. Get
So in other
inside.
words, the argument against those rights is that nobody in their right mind would make the choice to freeze to death.
Yeah.
Rational and
Or that's the argument you would have to make,
we
or
assume-
one of the arguments you have to make.
we assume that we're talking to rational and people who are logical, people who have agency. And mental illness can affect a person's agency.
Fair enough.
But is it other people's responsibility that someone else has a mental illness that tells them that they should sleep outside in a snowstorm and freeze to death? I don't know. Or is there a way to set up like a system? But I don't. It's hard to say that it's like anybody's particular responsibility to take care of other people just because other people are doing their thing.
That's fair. Well, and agency is a very interesting question, right? I mean, we know it's bad to do drugs or to smoke, but do people have agency and still make bad decisions?
Yes.
Yes, right? And so then it becomes a question of like, when is it,
Where's the line?
where's the line in granting you your agency?
It's like the rational person thing goes against that. Like a rational person wouldn't smoke.
Right.
Because it's bad for you.
Yeah.
Therefore we should ban it. And so it's a logical slippery slope that says kind of needing the government to ban a lot of things.
Yes.
Because it's bad, we should ban
McDonald's.
fatty food.
Yeah.
A
Exactly.
rational person wouldn't play the amount of video games I play, but I'm probably gonna be mad if someone tries to ban them.
I mean,
There's
or
like-
have cell phones.
there's a
I'm sorry,
line-
TikTok should be banned for all of you. Straight up.
Take it away. That's the only way I'll stop using it is if they ban it. I'm serious.
I mean, we know it's not good for you. The data that's come out for like young teens on what cell phones do is disturbing. I mean, they're actually getting dumber. Like their IQs are decreasing.
I have
I mean-
an issue with IQ in general.
What's that?
You can't. I have an issue with IQ in general because you can't measure intelligence on a pure number-based scale.
Fair enough.
It's hard to draw a line. We all want lines, we all want black and white.
Yep.
Yeah.
One side or another. That's what I talk about in my American government classes when we talk about free speech, for example. We talk about the penumbras of the First Amendment, and which is a shadow. If you know your astronomy, it's a shadow. But the shadow is not sharp. There's a blurry area where you're not quite sure. Is it protected speech? Is it not protected speech? And that's the same argument.
That's why I love policy, is because it's all gray.
Yeah, it's gray. One
There's-
big bowl of gray. That's
Yes.
what I usually say.
All of the easy decisions have already been made, right? Like if we could easily solve a problem, we would have already done it.
Yeah.
All that's left are the fun, tricky ones. What about if we think about things like justice versus mercy? How do we make ethical decisions there? So somebody commits a crime, right? When do we want justice and when do we show mercy? How does that work? Yeah.
Not to like give a mouthful, but like we should show mercy within our justice. I think justice is still important, but you should apply mercy when achieving it. If that makes sense. That
Okay.
like this understanding that this person is still a human and humans are going to be human.
Okay. Yeah.
You know what? I'm going to save that particular example for another time.
For another time. We only have 10 minutes left. 9 minutes left. You
Okay.
can save it? Okay.
Immediately. If someone commits a crime, they have to find something immediately before somebody else gets hurt.
Okay. So we don't show. What about like things like restorative justice? Right? The idea that if you commit a crime, you should have some mercy. Go ahead. Yes.
I lied. I'm going to do it.
Do it. Okay,
The woman who got stabbed on the subway a few months ago, who
Emily
had turned
Durham?
yes, who had
Yeah.
turned out the person who stabbed her had been convicted.
Is that any time?
Oh, he was released like 20 times.
Yes.
Yeah, he had multiple convictions.
Yeah, so they convicted him and let him out, and then he went and killed somebody. Obviously, pretty extreme example because of how many times, but still.
Well, so is that a case where we can't show mercy anymore?
Are you like what? At what point are you just putting people in danger by showing mercy because they're obviously doing it again? What's the line where, okay, everybody fails sometimes, and your chances are up. You're not even trying anymore.
Okay.
Well, kind of like what you were saying, like, the mercy in that situation is not like sentencing them to death. The mercy is that, oh, hey, you still get to, like, you're going to be arrested, you're going to be locked up again, you're going to be in jail, but we're not going to kill you.
I think we're showing mercy to others in the same way that we're showing mercy to him if we didn't let him out 20 times. We're showing mercy to him to not let him go kill somebody because obviously he's not in the right mind. Normal people don't kill people. So that would be showing mercy in itself to keep him locked up in a way. Because he's probably definitely worse off now that he killed somebody. And not only that, I mean, we could have saved that girl's life, and that would have been mercy. And you can achieve that through the justice system, I think.
So mercy for who?
Everyone.
Even the kid who shot Lincoln Wiley, you think he should be have mercy? Yes or no? Because he came here from New York and you kill her.
But what do you mean by, like, I think in the same way, like, that person committed a crime, so and they killed somebody, so they should be going to jail because the right person does not kill another person. I think that person should be locked up, but that doesn't mean we should, like, torture him and, like, maybe even sentence him to death. Like, I don't know, like it's written in the Constitution, you have to, like, no cruel and unusual punishment. And I think that's something that, like, is a little vague, but is something that we can, like, really write on.
When we're talking about mercy, are we talking about trying to determine what the correct amount of punishment is, or just waiving a punishment altogether?
I think we're talking about showing some grace. I don't think it's waiving necessarily a punishment altogether. I don't think that that's necessarily mercy. But when do you punish, when do you not? And how do you still ensure justice, right? So the one I think about all the time with this one is the Supreme Court came down and basically ruled that people who were under the age of 18 who were then tried as adults couldn't be sentenced to life in prison. Like, there had to be some sort of redemptive potential. I mean, is that a merciful thing? Is that a good thing? Right? If ethics are supposed to determine good versus bad behavior, right? Go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna make a general comment.
Do it.
I don't want to interrupt you.
I don't care. Go.
I was just
I
gonna
hear myself
say.
talk a lot.
I was just gonna say that we could talk about mercy and giving people second chances or rehabilitation over incarceration, but, like, America is not there yet. The American people are not there yet. They don't want that. I mean, think about Laken Riley and the girl who was killed on the bus. Those two incidents were politicized and turned into political talking points by the Republican Party. which in turn made the Democratic Party have to respond, and it riled up both bases. And so, I mean, if our politicians and people in charge are going to continue using people losing their lives as political talking points, nobody's going to be for rehabilitation. Nobody's going to be for mercy. They're going to want to throw that guy under the jail.
What about you? Not society as a whole.
What about me?
What about you?
I don't like the death penalty.
Okay.
I'm completely against the death penalty.
That's fair.
Starting there. And I do believe that rehabilitation over incarceration for certain crimes. Like
Okay.
at some point, you're just a lost cause.
So what's the line for you if somebody did something to you? When could you show mercy versus when would you clamor for justice?
I mean, I think it's easy to sit here and say, you know, I can show mercy to somebody who like
Kills your mom?
Yeah, I can sit here and say that. Obviously, I don't think I could say that, but it's easy for someone to sit here and be like, yeah, I can show mercy to somebody who did that, but then it actually happens to you. And then you're like, you have the emotions, you have to experience that. You're not going to want to show mercy to that person, you're going to want to fucking kill that person.
Well, and that's the ethical dilemma.
Yeah.
Right? Is that there's that, you know that the right thing, at least in theory, right, is to show mercy and compassion to people. Maybe there was a reason, right? Maybe there were extenuating circumstances. Maybe they didn't mean to kill your mom, but they did because they were committing a robbery because their kids were starving, whatever the case may be, right? You can understand that there is that need for punishment, but also that need for mercy. And so where do you find that balance? And I think that's the ethical dilemma, is that we as inherently as human beings understand that we're flawed and we make mistakes and that there are extenuating circumstances on both sides of that, right? We have that need for justice, but we also have that need. We would like, in at least our situation, I think in most cases, to have some mercy shown to us for the things that we do wrong, right? Go ahead.
Kind of going off of what you just said. What is the purpose of punishment? Is it because you deserve it, or just because we're trying to bring out the best outcome to society? Like, is it like you did a morally incorrect thing and now you deserved the punishment, or we can't let murderers walk around on the street because then they'll murder somebody else, so for the betterment of society we're just going to keep them where they can't kill anyone?
Isn't it just
But
both?
no actual morality comes into it.
Isn't it just both though?
I think it does go hand in hand by like delivering a punishment. It keeps the rational from committing those sorts of crimes, and it creates an outlet for what to do with the irrational. I think there obviously should be some sort of punishment for a crime, because without that punishment then it wouldn't be a crime.
We've gone, I think, in waves as a society. The 1960s and 70s were all about the rights of the accused. That Escobedo case that I talked about, where you have to be, the police cannot just question you and you can't use, et cetera, et cetera. But by the 1980s and 90s and into the 2000s and even today, we've had this new phrase, victims' rights. And the focus has changed over time. We used to have a criminal justice professor here many, many years ago who talked about, and he used to work in the courts, who talked about 3 different types of defendants. One were the incorrigibles, and you just throw the book at them. On the other side, you have the kids who just get mixed up in the wrong thing, and they're scared to death, and they're never going to do anything wrong again. And you act lenient towards them. The real difficult ones are the ones in the middle, the ones who are on the edge. You really have to take care to make decisions, to make the right decision there.
When you talk about mercy and justice, a lot of it is about violence. Whether and not to paint it black and white, I don't want to, but like when you talk about mercy, it's this idea of choosing non-violence. And with justice, there is violence to justice. When we look at like Roman law, if you committed a crime, you just got killed. You just died. But it was through the state. It was a state sanctioned. It was not just a random killer. So a lot of this debate really comes on whether we want to try and strive for non-violence, or rather, like, what's our acceptable level of violence and injustice? And show mercy and not so those are the things that I'm this idea of violence.
Last word, and then Savannah, why don't you wrap it up for us?
I think the overall goal should just be ending the pain, whether that's through justice or mercy.
Oh, before you go, I teach an ethics and government class. I'm teaching it in the fall. So if you're interested, take
I'll
it.
be there. I don't
It's
know if that
fun.
encourages you guys or repels you guys. All right, thank you guys, and thank you, Dr. Kelly. We love you. We will probably make you do this again sometime. But yeah, thank you guys for coming. I hope you have a great spring break. Pay attention to the news, but don't get too bogged down in it.
Yeah.
Have a good day.
Breathe.
All the orange chairs go back in this classroom over here on this side.